A wise man once said, "We are all broken, for that is how the light gets in." And that's a conversation we're having today with a former drug addict whose story will blow you away. Welcome to Unscripted with me, Grace, from here, Radisson in Arboretum. Karibu. Hi, welcome to Unscripted. Thank you as always for making time for us. With us today is our guest, Ben Rogers. I'll allow him to introduce himself.
My name's Ben Rogers Samuredi, and I am a psychosocial counselor, but basically specializing in drugs and addiction counseling, and also a recovery coach in Meru.
Great.
Yeah.
So take us back to when it all started.
So started back when I was a little boy. I remember I was goat herding, and I brought these goats at home, and then how little boys love playing with the wrens. So I stood behind our small kitchen, and I was playing with the wrens, and then I had this conversation in our little kitchen. I knew that was my home, and I knew the lady inside there and the old man here was my father. These were my parents. I knew nothing else. So as they were conversing with a visitor, and then this visitor asked my grandmama, now my grandmother, who has brought these goats? And then she said, it's the son of Naomi. So that name Naomi, like in my little brain, it's resounded.
Like, who is that?
Who is this Naomi? And then she continued to tell a story about how I was left at 3 months by Naomi. Then in my little mind, I realized there and then that this was not my home. Everything was going well, very well, and I was this happy kid, performing. But then from that day, an emptiness grew inside me.
How old were you?
Yeah, and I think I was 6 to 7 years maybe. With that reality now, you start seeing things differently. You start even watching the way they are serving the food. If it's chicken, you're checking out which piece is on your plate. You start listening to the way they are talking, and then every time they are pretending that you belong to them, deep inside you don't belong to them. And then my grandmother was this disciplinarian, and it took a long time for me to ask her, like, who is this Naomi? And
so you didn't ask immediately?
I didn't ask immediately. That day I ran into the rains, and I cried into the rains, and then came back home much later in the evening. Of course, I fetched a beating from the disciplinarian. So I remember the day I asked her also, I fetched a beating. So I was like, who is this really Naomi? And then as time passed, one day I remember we were sitting in the maize plantation with my now grandfather, whom I thought then was my father. So as we sat there talking, I asked him, who is Naomi? That is how he explained to me who Naomi was, that she was my mother, and that she had left me when I was 3 months. And of course the emptiness grew, and I'm like, why didn't they tell me?
That's true.
Why didn't they tell me, like, for me to be able to know hapa si kwetu.
Tell me about high school. How was that like?
When I arrived in high school, I at first I was sponsored by someone to a boarding school, and like I got away from this misery and the pain that I was feeling. Basically, in African setup, our parents will talk about their feeding, their clothing, but then we do not address the emotional and psychological aspect. I was eating, I was dressing, but emotionally I was drained. Psychologically I was tortured. So when I arrived in at the boarding school, and I could see the other boys being visited, with parents. They are talking about their dad. It was these big guys, big shot school, Bishop Lawi Matthew. And then I remember being visited only once, and I remember how I cried. I had to recite poems to be given some food when I was really small. So when I got to high school, in Gopa Squad, I had that emptiness, because apart from looking for my mother, I'm also looking for my dad. So sometimes I could rant and rage and speak out all these things. Where is my father and stuff like that? So that emptiness, that sense of wanting to belong. Everyone wants to belong. Like, I want to come a home where I can demand stuff without being afraid, like, utaambiwa wewe hapa si kwenu, So I arrived in high school, and then I met these boys from the city and the local boys. And of course, I wanted to belong. That's how I got into this peer group.
So what happened? When did you turn for the West? What peer group?
I remember we were going for cross country, and then there was this friend of mine. As we went for the cross country, we passed through a particular home, and then he bought some stuff. I had never known this stuff before.
Okay.
Like he took like two tins. They were selling with tins, those plastic bluebird tins. So he took like two, and then he offered the third one. And now, because I wanted to really fit in to these guys, I took, and I felt the most awesome feeling I've ever felt, you know.
So what is this you were given exactly?
It was Mugasha, a local brew. So when I took it, I felt a relaxation, a calmness I had never felt before. And these guys like loved me, you know. They loved me. So from there it became regular. Every time you're running for cross country, we had to take the Mugasha, the local brew. And that's how one day I smoked. They passed a stick of bangi, and I smoked when I was in Form 2. And now it was no longer like experimenting. It was a regular basis now.
You were hooked.
I was into the second stage of addiction, which is regular. So I would Skype from school and go buy for them because I didn't care. I was not accountable to anyone. No one was like asking me, how many marks have you got? How did you perform? So I also didn't care. It was me against the world.
So how was it is it accustomed to that lifestyle so early for you? Were your grandparents aware?
It took a long time for them to discover, and I think that is the one issue that the society, the community has to deal with. They need to learn these signs.
How to pick the signs.
How to pick the signs, the red flags. They never saw it coming. Really? Because I would come late at night and then oversleep, like wake up in the middle of the day, and then and I was always on the move. Auntie's place, from one auntie to another auntie. So they came to discover one night when I came and just fell by the doorsteps, you know, like blackout. And no, some guys brought me. They brought me home, carrying me, and then they dropped me at the doorsteps.
Completely out.
Completely out. That is how my grandmother came to know that I was abusing alcohol.
And did that trigger anything in you to stop or to change?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing. I felt nothing. This was my life. I had accepted that this is my lifestyle. You know that calmness, you know that calmness that I felt. I accepted completely, this is my life, and I didn't care. I was like completely sold to the devil. I
know you're young at that age, but did you ever try seek your parents and look for them?
Yes, I remember the first time my grandmother, Grace, she's your namesake. I think you will have to call her one day. She introduced me to a family and told me that is where I belonged.
Oh.
And I went there. I think I stayed there for 2 weeks.
Really?
Then after 2 weeks, I didn't work out well. So I came back to a place. And then as time passed, she introduced me to another family. That's my family. And my mind was like confused. How in this world can I have two dads? And then much later, another family came home.
Okay.
Like they were looking for their son. You know, and then I was taken through these motions of Africans, you know, remove your shoes, we want to look at your toes, we want to look at your fingers. I was parented, you know, and I now had 3 dads to choose from, and I was confused, and I was like, I don't care anymore. I really don't care. And I am like, you people, you are irresponsible. You didn't even know where your daughter went. You didn't know who.
But you know who your father was?
Eventually, I came to know who my father was, and through that family.
I see.
You know, and by the time I reached to get to know the home, he was no more. He was also late. So I never seen my mom, I never seen my dad. I've never said daddy, mommy. Those are strange words to me.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It happens. So many people out there, they're passing through the same.
Yeah. Let's take a short break. When we come back, you can tell us more about the addiction journey. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, before the break, you were telling us how your journey to addiction began and what caused it.
Yeah.
But now you're a regular user. You're in high school.
Yes.
How are you maintaining this lifestyle, and how were your studies affected in turn?
The mean grade started getting lower and lower as the days passed, and which I didn't care. Anyway, I didn't care at the end of the day.
Okay.
And
because you felt like no one cared.
Yes, because I felt like, why am I doing it? There's no dad to applaud me because of their performance. And now these are grandparents. I'm like, okay, it's not even their duty even to bring me up. So I had this blame game, a lot of blame game.
I see.
And then eventually, you know, when you get hooked to addiction now, because I was getting to the dependent state where I cannot function without a drink. So the first thing, you become a liar. So I started cheating, lying, and conning, and then stealing, you know, small time chicken, you know, maize, grandma's maize, and stuff like that. Yes, I remember there was a time I stole a cooking pot, and as I was carrying it to go and sell, some old women saw me in the village, and they started shouting. So I didn't know if to run with it or to drop it, so I was like confused, but then I had to drop it down and run. So you realize that slowly I was getting into this stealing and stuff like that. And of course that affected my social life because now I was totally rejected. Like my family, no one wanted me to go to their place. No one wanted me to be associated with them. No one wanted to mention that I am their relative and stuff like that. And of course, I was kicked out of my grandmother's place, then kicked out of my auntie's place where I grew up. So I started sleeping in these whole Land Rovers, wherever I found to sleep. If I get drunk, I would get into these bushes and sleep, and then wake up like 5 p.m. and go back to drinking. Of course, fetching water for these old women. So socially, I was alienated. I felt alone.
How did that make you feel?
So broken.
Being abandoned by everyone.
So broken. When everyone, you know, when you come home, you're visiting your grandma, and you find that the store, maybe the store was open, and then she's picking keys and closing the doors, and then you get to church, you sit, you know, like you're seeking God. And then you sit next to this person, and like she picks up a porch and moves to the next seat. You feel like you want to die. I really wanted to die. But one thing is, you know, my grandfather used to say, if you commit suicide, you'll go to hell. I think that stopped me from committing suicide. But I really courted death. I really wanted to die.
The moments you tried? You thought about it?
Yes, there are moments I thought about it so many times. And there are moments I would go without food and then drink that conch changa. It's called bikira in Meru. I would drink that so that I get burnt and somehow die. And then I would sleep in the bushes waiting for death to come and get me. But death never came.
It never came.
There's always that rising sun, and I'm like, okay, I'm here again. Yeah.
You still have a purpose.
Yeah, I never thought about purpose back then. I thought that, and I would challenge God, like, oh God, you are omnipresent, I hear, you're all powerful and stuff like that. Why don't you kill me? If you don't kill me, save me.
Wow. Before you tell me about how God saved you, because he did, if you're here to tell your story, take me back to that time when your grandma chased you, your auntie chased you, then you joined a squad, a Gopa Squad. Tell me about that.
Yes, there was these boys in our village, they were called Gopa Squad. So we were all addicts, like, but then we didn't know we were addicts, you know, living in denial and stuff like that. So we were like 7 guys, and we really terrorized the village because from stealing chicken, from stealing maize, and whatever we found, we stole so that we can maintain our lifestyle. And all these fights, and then we could waylay these drunkards and then steal from them. As long as we maintain our lifestyle, we didn't care what we did.
see.
Yes, we completely didn't care. A number of times we were taken to police cells, and then somehow we got released because most of these guys, their families were these big fishes in the village. Okay. So we eventually would be released. But
did that change in any way, being arrested?
No, it hardened me.
It hardened
because
you.
I remember, like, the first time my uncle took me to a police station, and I'm there, and then there was this guy who was brought a robber, you know, this criminal robber, and he was telling us all these stories about what he has done and how he got away. And I felt like I would love to be like this man. I would love to own guns and do the stuff he's doing.
So he was your mentor?
He became my mentor in the cell.
Look at that.
Yes, he became my mentor, and I remember visiting him after the cells because he was released. I remember going to his home, and I was thinking, why not organize with this guy and then we shoot the whole of my family?
No.
Yes. Eventually, I thought of that. I went to visit him, and we had lunch, and somehow it never went through. I think God's providence and times and stuff like that.
You're ready to take?
To sweep the whole family, like completely. Because I felt they don't understand me. Yes, I'm feeding, yes, I'm dressing, but there's that emotional, psychological aspect of it that these guys, they don't understand because they have criminalized me like I'm the black sheep, it's called, right? Yeah, I'm the black sheep of the family, which I was looking back.
Yeah. And
yeah, it was really tough.
Did you ever get to use a gun? Have access to
I met friends who had in Isiolo. There's a place called Golan.
Yeah.
But before they trained me how to shoot, one of the guys was shot dead. So I had to run away from Isiolo.
Tell me about the job you got after that with a certain Asian.
Yeah, there's a time I got a job with some Asians in Meru. They were making these PVC pipes. But then the job didn't last, and then somehow one of the Asians, we made a plan that we should start selling potatoes in Mombasa. Okay. So I was the guy to deliver the potatoes in Mombasa. And when I arrived in this place called Kibarani, I was like, this is where I want to be.
Right.
Yes, Mombasa, here I come.
Why?
And I made sure I went to every club in Mombasa. Named them. I made sure I went to every club because what we usually did with the potatoes, we would leave them with the brokers would sell, then the next day you could just count the sacks and you know, the balance. So like I went wild in Mombasa. And as they say, kuingia rahisi kutoka ni ngumu. I was not for kutoka. Really? I really didn't want to kutoka.
What did you love so much about it?
It was the heat, you know. I don't know. Something was so captivating about it. Okay. You know, seeing all those guys at the beach, you know, walking with vests, you know, shorts, that lifestyle, like, it attracted me, and I wanted really to get away from home. To get away from my
the farther you were from home,
yes,
the happier you were.
The happier I got. So that's how somehow I managed to meet a friend, and he connected me to a college in Mombasa, Mombasa Polytechnic.
I see.
And then I arrived at the college, and guess my seatmate is one of the guys who dealt drugs in Mombasa. Their family dealt, you know, and come with a lot of mirror. And I gave him some, and he invited me to their place, and that is how we started. We became couriers, like to take drugs to different points, and then we paid the money.
How was it, that experience?
It
became
was
officially a drug dealer.
Yes, and wow. I felt so good about it. Every time I delivered and I received that money, I felt so good about it, and I was no longer going to college. I would have some people try to do assignments for me, but I didn't care even about the assignments. Wow. And now, because the money was there were these girls in the college. They didn't have money, so they're like, where to nunulia chips? And you're like, okay, chips aina shida, we simkule. That's how we started dealing them. Like we would get these Italians or these old mzes in Mombasa. We get the girls, drag them, and sell them to these old people. And some
you became a pimp as well?
Yes, I became a pimp, like a big-time pimp, because I knew all these clubs from the past. From the past, I had visited all these clubs, so I became a pimp, and I really kind of made money. And funny enough, there are those guys who really wanted to be pimped. Like they would come on Friday and say, you know, I don't have money for this, I don't have money for this. And you're like, okay, I'm going to get someone to give you money. Give me 2K. And then you get 2K from the lady, and then you get 2K from the man, and you're 4K at the end of the day. So
what did doing all this do for you inside? What were you feeling? Were you satisfied? What was this?
I felt this satisfaction, especially when I was dealing these girls, because I was blaming my mom. You know, that my mother, I was blaming my mom, my aunties, my grandmother, so I didn't care about them. Somehow, it's the grace of God that brought me back to love the women part of it. Yes, I was so mad about my mom.
You were mad at
at least she could have left her name, written a note, this is your father, and I could have belonged as early as that. So it gave me that satisfaction. You know those drinking sprees, those smoking, Mamangina Drive, Florida, Casablanca, all those clubs we used to frequent. So I was sinking deeper and deeper. And finally I was kicked out of college.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how did this affect your studies? You were kicked out?
Yes, I was kicked out of the college, and that ended my studies. And somehow the police were looking for this family. And one day I go visit this family and they are not there. Like the doors are locked, the gates are locked, and the guards are there. There's no one. Like I just passed, like as if I wasn't going there, because the police were looking for them and they disappeared.
Wow.
Yes. So I didn't have that supply of money. So I started using the little money I had, and eventually I dropped in the streets in Mombasa. And this lady, somehow, she got me into a bus to go to Meru. So that's how I came back.
You came back home?
So to Meru home. And then, of course, I joined Gopa Squad.
Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So before the break, you tell us you're at the coast.
Yeah.
You are balling out of control.
Yes.
You're doing all that you can, but you lose it all. And you have to go back to Meru.
Yes.
But at what point did things turn for the better, if I could put it that way?
Oh, okay. When I arrived back to the Gopa Squad, I was like done. I was this emaciated guy. I lost weight.
You look different, huh?
Dirty. And somehow I went back to my auntie's place, and she took me in.
Okay.
And then after some time, she kicked me out. Then I went, there's this lady who had a whole Land Rover. Okay. So I started sleeping in the whole Land Rover. Okay. And then one day she found me in the whole Land Rover. And then by God's grace, she was a friend to my mom, childhood friend. So she took me in and then took me to church. And then that's the first time I met a pastor, Pastor John Moiti. He's currently in Zambia. And that is the first man who listened to me. Everyone else was condemning me. Everyone was seeing flaws. But he sat for 2 good hours and listened to me. And this lady never condemned me. She gave me a room and told me, that is your home. And that's the kitchen, you can eat. And I remember that day, bwana nililetewa mchele sikuwa naamini ni yangu. I was afraid she might take it back. Kuona sahani ya full eti mchele na nyama, as in for me, I never believed it. So anyway,
how was that moment of being accepted by someone?
I felt so good, and I started seeing God in a different perspective. I had these encounters with preachers before, falling in, falling out. I mean, getting in, getting out, because I hadn't really had a touch of that caring God. But from these two people, I came to learn about this loving God and conditional love. Then somehow this pastor was going to Zambia. So we went to Zambia, and I did my degree in theology.
Really?
Yes. And I did psychosocial counseling. Wow. And I came back to Kenya. That time I was struggling with divorce, and because we had separated with my wife earlier.
I see. So
there was the issue of divorce and stuff like that. So I relapsed, went back to drinking. That was like after 5-6 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I completed college nicely and started a program for street kids in Zambia. So when I came back during that struggle of divorce and stuff like that, no one understood me. And so I relapsed. And you can imagine coming from, you know, paying this plane ticket to and from Zambia, and then all of a sudden you're asking people to give you 10 shillings ya kukunywa chang'aa. And everyone
You went back to scratch?
To scratch, completely to scratch. I sold all the clothes, I sold everything, literally. All the suits I had, everything I had, I sold it. So I went to these Turkana neighbors. That is where even I would spend my time. And once again, it was chaos. I was worse than before.
What would go through your mind in those very low moments?
Like I'm doomed. And I remember meeting this pastor, and he told me, like, you know, some people are just doomed like Judas. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it's coming from a pastor. Wow. So I accepted that, like Judas,
it's your fate.
It's my fate to die like this. But then some friends, we used to school with them in Gopa School, got a wind of what was happening to me. So they located me in Isiolo. And I remember them sending transport for me to come to Nairobi. And I told them, okay, I'm coming. And I drank the transport. And I am calling them, I'm telling them, niko Accra. Unajua Wameru wakikuja Nairobi lazima wataje T-room. Tuko hapo tu T-room hapo. Then niangalieni hapo, and then I switched off the phone because I was still in Isiolo. They never gave up. Wow. I remember one of them, Kenon Mweti, he had to negotiate with a woman in Isiolo who owned a hotel so that I could get food. Because no one wanted me, so I was sleeping outside there. Then I was sleeping in the toilet. My blanket was mosquito net, and for like a whole month I slept in that toilet. And then they sent some more money, and I came to Nairobi. That's how they took me to U-Turn for Christ. It's a rehab center in Gong. And that is where I started.
That was a turning point.
Yes, that was my turning point. Right. And I started looking at these. My habit, my lifestyle as a sickness. You know, that is where I came to realize that addiction is a disease. It's not per se a demon, it's not a flaw of character, it's just a chronic brain disease. So that is where my turning point began. But then it never lasted, because after 1 month, I relapsed.
Why?
Because,
what was the trigger?
You know, yes, because of the triggers. And then there is something very important about coming from rehab. There was no support system.
I see.
And that is a major thing in a rehab. So I went back and came back, and then somehow they gave me a job to start training these guys, because I had the knowledge and the psychosocial knowledge and the theology aspect of it.
So how many years, or how long have you been sober now? Today?
Like 4 years, but then with one relapse.
One relapse.
And a lapse. You know, lapse doesn't last long.
Okay.
Yeah, because what happens is that addiction is like something embedded in the nerve cells, in the neurotransmitters. It's like when you go to a place and you eat like nice meat, the moment you go back there, you feel the urge like
to have that again.
That is not witchcraft, that's not a sickness. It's a part of brain that's called limbic system that reminds you of a pleasurable moment. So
it goes to a familiar place.
Yes, familiar place, familiar experiences. It's the emotional part of the brain.
So how do you cope with that when that happens?
Now, currently, when I came to realize that this is a disease that I have, and it has affected my brain cells. Now I have to run. I can tell you about addiction. You have to walk away from it, because anytime now I feel that urge, I find something else to do. I keep myself busy researching about this. I have read so many materials about addiction, and they say
an idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Yes.
So don't stay idle.
Then I'm giving most of my time to the community. There's a program we started in Charia with a certain family, James Rueto. It's called Dogza. That is where we bring in all these drunks who cannot afford to go to the rehab.
How did that come to be? What motivated you to go back and give back to your community?
I usually feel the pain. When I see a drunk, I go back to what I was feeling. I experience the stigma from his perspective. I mean, from his point of stand, empathy, if we more call it that. I fit in his shoes and feel him. Because number one, the community thinks it's witchcraft. I've met so many parents who have gone to these prophets
To pray for them.
Yeah, to pray for them. Like one the other day was telling me she has been given like pray our Father in heaven like 7 times 7, you know. I was given that. You know, that's what that means. It's you pray that prayer for 49 times and don't miss one. So
hoping that will heal you.
Yes, hoping that will heal you. And then they are given some waters, hoping the waters will heal them. But it has to begin from inside.
But what motivates you? I mean, you said over 17 years of being addicted.
Yeah.
What motivates you each day to not go back to that place?
What motivates me is sometimes I look back at that life. I look back at when I had that money from drugs and I did nothing with the money. Then I look at the life that I spent when I hit rock bottom. And I remember the feelings, the sleepless nights, the nights that I would feel like splitting my hand. I remember one time when I was injured here, you know, someone stabbed me here, this part. So there were these stitches. And one night I got drunk, changa, smoked bang, and I literally removed them. Ouch. Like cut them and remove. I wanted to die, but I never died. So what motivates me is that I know there are people hurting out there. There are so many people hurting out there. We have so many issues of mental disruptions. I feel that as parents, they need to understand what really addiction is. As the community, they really need to understand that those are not bad people, that we want grace to be good people. Yeah. They are sick people who needs to be treated. It's like telling me that when you have malaria, grace, you are bewitched. No, it's a brain disease that needs a lot of love. And also, yeah, I also I'm trying to reach out even to the churches, to the pastors, because when you look at the way Christ taught, you know, the way Christ reached out to the people is different from the way we are reaching out.
That's true.
Because we are more condemning than loving.
That's true.
But look at this. Jesus comes and finds Zacchaeus. He knows Zacchaeus is a thief, but he doesn't tell him, you thief, step down. He tells him, you know what? Today I'm taking supper at your place. Yeah. And in the middle of the dinner, Zacchaeus says, I'll pay all the people that I've stolen from. And then he meets this Samaritan woman. He knows she's a prostitute. She has had all these men. But he asks water. Compassion. You know, compassion. Compassion. We need to reach out to these people with compassion. That motivates me. That someone is hurting and I'm able to help them because I was helped by people.
God bless you.
Those friends helped me. I need to help someone. That motivates me.
So as we finish this part, what can you tell someone at home who maybe has been through a similar experience or is feeling hopeless and lost at this moment? What can you tell them? To begin with, let me talk to someone struggling with addiction back out there. And because I know there are many, I've met many, and I know that moment of hopelessness, that moment like you feel it's over. I want to tell you it's not over. Addiction is those strange doors that can only be opened from the inside. So the key is with you. And then there is hope. There is hope. There is always a new day. Despite the fact that it is dark, the sun is still coming up. You know, the sun hasn't disappeared just because it's at night. Something else I want to tell the community. Let's break this stigma. An addict is not a bad person who we want to be good. Yeah. An addict is a sick person. We need to accept him. We need to embrace him. Yeah. Just like we are treating asthma, we are treating other chronic diseases. We need to create an environment where if he comes from the rehabilitation center, there is that social worker in the village. There is that pastor. There is that family, you know. Because most of the times, an addict doesn't love what he does. Of course. They don't love the drinking. No one loves. By the time you're coming to condemn him, he already doesn't like it.
Yes, already I've condemned myself. That's true. Because when you're coming to tell me I'm dirty, I know. That's when you're telling me I'm wearing torn clothes, it's me who wore them. So I know that when you play pity party, doesn't work. So we accept that we have a problem in the society, and we accept that these people can be helped through the support system. Because mostly there are so many underlying issues, maybe divorce, maybe childhood trauma, maybe so many things. Let's seek what are the roots. because addiction and drinking, those are the leaves and the branches. What are the
symptom
roots?
to something else.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Rogers.
Thank
Very
you very
insightful.
much.
We appreciate you and we wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but I hope you've picked a few things from him. I know I have. Otherwise, take care of yourselves. Good night. God bless. And thank you, Radisson Nabaratan, for hosting us. Goodbye.